Heavenly Father, we're so thankful to be here today. We're grateful to have a voice and a channel that we can think about Thee. We can worship Thee, we can talk and share story. We're so grateful for all the challenges and struggles that we've had in our life, the times and the gaps where we feel hardship, but also we feel Thy love, and how we found strength to be lifted by Thee and to just simply hold on.
Welcome back to the Hold On Studios. We're so glad you've decided to join us. Today's special day. Just super excited to have our friend Steven Jenkins in the studio with us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a long-time guest, we sure hope you're finding some value and some hope from these sessions. As usual, we've asked Steve Jenkins to give us a little opening prayer and get us started on the right foot.
Awesome.
Steve,
and Kyle, thank you both for having me. So appreciate the honor to be here. Really is a privilege. So yeah, I'll open us up and get going. But Father, I just want to thank you for this day. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to just have the friendships that I have in my life and the life-giving opportunities to connect with others. Lord, I pray that our time together is just special. I pray that you bless our conversation, bless the undertones of what we discussed today, and help it to be impactful for those that are listening, those that are paying attention, God. And I know you have a word for each and every one of us, and I pray that is delivered today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Steve, thank you so much. I forgot to also, welcome my man, Jay Larson.
I wish I had like a name. I need an official name.
You do need an official name.
DJ Jazzy Jared or something. I don't know. This is so cool, Steven. Like I have had the opportunity to meet Steven for just a little bit here, but man, even while you're praying, Steven, like I feel this light about you, and there's something different. And I'm just gonna kind of freestyle a little bit here, but where does that come from, man? Where does that confidence come from? Where does that who you are, man? I just feel you, right?
Yeah. And thank you so much for that. It really is. For me, I just try to be authentically who I feel God has created me to be, and I fully trust in His plan for my life. Ultimately, I had a set of objectives that I set out for myself early on that none of them were achieved, luckily. And I always planned to live in a city with an NBA team, an NFL team, and everything else, and all these superficial things, right? None of that materialized, and I find myself here in Idaho with, the great friendships, the people that invested in me heavily. I've learned tremendous amount since I've been here. So I think just trusting God's plan for my life and just really buying into what He has as opposed to my own plans, right? So just giving myself up to that.
So okay, let's back way up. So I love to ask this question. Just tell us your story. Like, what's your story? What's the Steven story? And you can start wherever you need to start, but we want to hear the struggles. We want to hear the challenge. So invite us into your life.
All right, this is going to be, let's see if I can condense this well. I don't want to go too long on this, but I didn't think about this previously, so this is going to be a little bit of a freestyle for me as well. But ultimately, I played basketball all my life. My brother and I have a brother, a sister, and myself. So we all grew up, and basketball was a big part of our lives, and my brother played at a pretty high level. I always tell people, he's 5'11", left-handed. He can really shoot. He's quick. He has all the natural gifts that you can imagine in a human being for basketball. And then it was me. So in our genetic line, he sucked all the good things out of it, and then he left me the scraps, so to speak. So I'm 5'8.5" roughly. I am right-handed. I have to work really hard for everything that I get in my life in terms of the basketball skill set that I've established over time. So I did that, and I believed in the Allen Iverson mentality of, hey, even though you're small, you can make it, you can find a way. So I really fought hard to get there. And long story short, I had a chance to attend Oral Roberts University, which is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was playing on the team there, and then was able to transfer to Reinhardt University in North Georgia, and went through some real struggles, I would say, with basketball as a whole. And it's not just because of hype, just opportunities and things like that. And you have to find your way outside of sports, which is difficult for many athletes to do, just because it becomes your identity. And your success in any given sport is part of that as well. And meanwhile, my brother went to East Carolina, and then he played professionally and did all these great things. And he had to eventually find himself as well. So he's now a police officer, by the way, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So just crazy where life takes you. Just amazing where those things happen. But I always thought I was going to do something in athletics. And I said, well, if I can't play sports, or maybe I can't play at the high level that I believed I could, then I'll just be a broadcaster, or I'll do something in the background, or I'll be an assistant coach, or whatever the case is. So I ended up going to Missouri State for graduate school, which is in Springfield, Missouri. And I tried to get a graduate assistantship in athletics. And I told the athletic folks over there, baseball, football, basketball, whatever, I want to do anything I could. I'll say I'll sweep the floors, I'll clean the fields, I'll do whatever I can. Just give me a graduate assistantship. And I needed that because financially I just couldn't afford the graduate program that I was in, which was communications. And I needed a program. I needed something to get into so I can pay for the school that I needed. So long story short, again, I just kept hitting walls. I couldn't get anything in athletics. I was like, God, what is going on here? What is happening? So I had an advisor at Missouri State that said, hey, you should get into teaching. And I have always felt that I've just been shy and reserved all my life. In fact, in basketball, I always used to be the assist guy. I wanted to pass you the ball so you can score and look good, as opposed to me being in the spotlight, so to speak. It just wasn't my thing. And I just thought, man, what a miserable experience that would be to teach in front of freshmen and sophomore at Missouri State University. Did not feel like a great situation for me at all. But that was all I had, and I had to accept it. So I applied for the graduate assistantship for teaching, and was awarded the opportunity to do it, which was a blessing. And then my heart sank at the same time. So I did teach at Missouri State as a graduate assistant, and I did that for 2 years. And my first day was horrible. I remember I was clenching my keys, and I have a Bible verse on my keys, and it's Ephesians 6:10, essentially saying that trust in God's strength and the strength of the Lord, not that of yourself. And I was just clenching it, and usually black people don't blush, but I was blushing that day, honestly. and it was just so daunting in that classroom. It was crazy, but I got through it and I survived. And each day I got a little bit better incrementally. And I really found I found that I enjoyed it. And when I left Missouri State, transitioned to Idaho, where I live now, I started teaching at CWI and just carried that out. And I just taught online for a number of years and have enjoyed it thoroughly. And now, honestly, in the position I'm in here with the city of Caldwell, I present time and time again. I mean, more times than I could have even imagined. And I see that God had prepared me for that. And I would have been in no position whatsoever to have done that if I just stayed on the course that I was on. And God knew more so than obviously myself, but I just had no clue how it would unfold. And it really did. It came to fruition quite well.
So I have a question. So let's talk about basketball, because there's some hard stuff in there, right? Like you breezed through it, like you just worked super hard. And, I'm hearing is the struggle was real, and you had to grind and you had to push yourself and you finally arrived. How did you grind through that? Like, what did you have to do mentally? How did you just hang on? Like when you could, it would have been easier to quit, right?
Yeah, definitely easier to quit, and probably the most viable path, right, in terms of what was there. And sometimes just in life, when you have an idea or a mindset around something, you really want to push through on that. And there are times when, hey, that's great, and you should do that, but sometimes it doesn't embody endurance. Sometimes there's an idea or a foundation for something that's going to lead you to a new idea. And for me, it just took a very long time to get there. It was like mining for gold. You have to really uncover what it looks like in your future and what the plans need to be and whatnot. And it's just, I've learned that it's just open door after an open door, and you keep walking through that open door and seeing what's behind that door for you. But basketball, yeah, definitely. I moved around quite a bit as a kid. I lived in 8 states. I failed to mention that. So moving around, I never had a lot of stability. So my dad was an insurance adjuster, and he would chase storms in essence. So if there was an earthquake or a tornado or a hurricane, then he would often go to that location and do his work. And we would find ourselves moving in those instances. I also, I'm gonna be real here, right? Yeah. We had some struggles in our family. My mom struggled deeply with, I think, her identity and who Christ called her to be. And really it was just, it's a struggle today, to be honest. And it's one of those where we saw that growing up, and we we struggle with evictions from our homes and some pretty significant hardships. I've lost all my childhood photos of myself and toys and all those things, just things that you would cherish in life. And they're in a pod somewhere. If maybe they're on that show where they sell those storage units. I'm not sure where they're at, but all my possessions essentially were lost. So I've had to regroup a lot in my life and pick up the pieces and find a way to put things back together and really just trust in God. Really, it really does come to that. When you have nothing else, sometimes life, it makes you tie yourself more closely to God instead of what plans you have for yourself. And that was something that I found that was really true in my life.
How were you able to do that, Steve? Because, I mean, that's tough, right? As a kid, bouncing around like that, mom struggling. Like, at what point in your life did you, like, really grab on, Like, when did you, like, man, I got to hold on to this because everything around me is just falling apart? Like, when did you really feel like that happened for you?
Yeah, great question. I would say that God was working in the background for me. I actually looked at some of those things that I'd gone through and I dealt with it in a bad way. I just didn't handle it well. When I was at Oral Roberts, one of the reasons I transferred is because I couldn't get approved through the NCAA to play at the Division I level through the process for getting approved for athletes. And once that happened and I had to go to the NAIA level, I was very upset. And because of that, I made some poor decisions. And I found myself in a friend group that was also making poor decisions. So I remember going out and going back to Atlanta where I lived at the time and going to clubs and drinking and doing these pursuits that led me to nowhere. And I had this big void in my life, but yet I kept repeating that cycle. And the more you feel that void is growing, the more you try to feed it with something that doesn't fill it.
Yeah. Right? It just keeps draining out the bottom. You just keep filling.
Yep, exactly. So I was in this crazy cycle of activity. And one thing that happened that was really cool. So I was shooting around at a basketball gym at LA Fitness in Marietta, Georgia. And this guy came up to me and interrupted my workout. I was a little upset about it because I was working out. And this guy comes up, he goes, hey, you want to come shoot with me? And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'll try to be nice. Okay, I'll shoot a little bit and then I'll get back to my workout. And this guy, man, he worked me out harder than most. I was just really surprised by it. He obviously knew what he was doing. Yeah. He ended up being a good friend of mine and a mentor. His name is Matt Shear. He still lives in Georgia today. I actually texted him yesterday, but he became a mentor for me and really taught me how to just reignited my passion for God and helped me understand what it looked like to follow God in a more tangible way. And he kept chipping away at that. It wasn't just, hey, good to meet you, let's go read about the Bible and do a Bible study. Yeah. It was the relationship that Matt built with me through basketball that helped us to build trust and build a bond. And then from there, we were able to get deeper and learn more about the important aspects of life and the things that really matter. And I watched Matt and how he lived, and his example alone just taught me so much. So I wanted to learn more naturally because I was like, hey, you have something that I think I want. And Matt taught me how to walk that walk and how to take those steps to get there. And like I said, just God was putting people in my life to help me advance and get to the next level and in my walk with God. And that was so important, I think, because I couldn't have done it on my own. And
that's really a common thing that we see, right? Everyone's got this mentor, everyone's got this somebody, right, that Christ has put in their life to kind of like, hey, Steve Jenkins, I know where you can get to, right? Let me put someone in your life to really help you get there. I want to meet this Matt guy now. So we'll put Matt on the board.
No doubt. Matt's name's going on the board. So, okay. So Matt's mentoring you, right? And there's a couple things that stood out to me in that story is like, one, the simplicity of what happened. Like you're at the gym, you're intense, you're in this workout, and Matt just rolls up and he's like, hey man, you want to shoot? Like, let's go shoot some hoops. And he shoots some hoops, and there's this friendship that he built. And then over that friendship, it turns into this mentorship, and you start talking about God, and you're seeing this example and the strength in him. And I think of this, like, there's this difference between testimony and conversion, right? Matt started like building your testimony up, and you're like, dang, I want that. I want what you have. But at some point, Steven had to say like, I'm going to commit to this myself. And so like, when did you see in your personal life this conversion happen? Like this pinnacle moment where you're saying, I'm all in, my walk with Jesus is like now.
So I would say that it definitely was slow moving. It was one of those where I saw what Matt had. I saw what the people around Matt had. There are a number of folks that I can name off right now that I associate myself with by virtue of my relationship with Matt. But beyond that, I had to have something in my heart, right, to connect me to God. And it had to be deeper than just what Matt had or someone else had or whatever the case is. So I ended up during that period of time going to Missouri State. And I'm a strong believer in the people that you associate yourself with are going to dictate where you go, what your next steps look like, or those types of things. So when I went to Missouri State, I had gone to church and I was by myself, and I was seated next to another influential person in my life who I still keep in touch with. His name is Rob Will. He's my best friend now. And Rob, coincidentally, was also sitting by himself. And we were just together right there. And it was at North Point Church in Springfield, Missouri. And it's one of those where, again, just how ironic it is just too ironic, right?
Yeah.
So in talking to Rob, I was like, he said, hey, what are you doing in Missouri? Or are you from here, that kind of thing? I said, no, I'm here for school. He's like, I'm here for school. And I said, do you have any family here? He said, no, I don't have any family. I don't have any family. You know, all these connections that we had just off the top. And then he said, hey, do you want to get something to eat after this? And I was like, okay, this is weird. I don't know if I want to do this. But I did it. You know, I was like, oh, let's go get something to eat. And then we started talking more about our commonalities. And he played basketball in college as well. And just all these things that we were like, oh, man, this is just so weird. So Rob and I just built a friendship from the beginning. And we're able to do that. But Rob is now a pastor in San Jose, California. And he's at a pretty sizable church out there. He pastored in Vermont for a little bit. And now he's back there. But he's someone that I can really lean into in terms of just getting advice, and he's a guy that I could bounce a lot of things off of. But just going back to Missouri with Rob, his associations there helped me build my friendship group, and that really solidified my relationship with God. I think sometimes you have a perception of how things will be, like you have to fill this quota, like I need to read the Bible this X amount of time to get in God's grace, or it's just a lot of work, or those types of things. And really, it's that relationship piece that I had to better understand. And I was able to realize that through my friendships and how they were walking. And again, it just furthered that example of what it looked like. And then I started buying in a little bit more and building my own relationship and just establishing my own footing and my own faith. And I think that's so important for anybody to do is finding your own way with God and having a path that obviously leads you to building that trust with God and understanding who he is and what he has for you.
Yeah. So as you're walking this walk and you're building your faith, as you were leading up to that, what advice would you give to listeners, right? So I may be a mom, I may be a dad, I may be a teenager that's on this and's like, dude, that's Steven Jenkins, that thing was crazy. I love that. What advice do you have for them? Like, how do you get from when you were struggling, maybe not making the right choices? And we got parents that are like, man, my children are struggling. Like, what advice do you give them? How do you get through that to eventually, how do you hang on or hold on for that period to get to where you could walk with Jesus?
Mm-hmm. I think for me, looking back at my life, it was really just understanding that there was a gap in my life, right? Like, I think for anybody that's out there that's struggling with that, identifying with it within yourself, man, is this really what life's about? Is this fulfilling? What I'm doing is this helping me feel really have a strong foundation with life and where I'm at? When ultimately that was what I had come to, and just trying to understand, like, why do I feel so empty every day when I'm doing these things? I'm doing all the right things according to what man's asking me to do. And I think, too, to take it a little deeper within the context of different cultures, particularly with rap music and those types of things, I was listening to all that, and it was getting in my spirit. So I felt really strongly with a tie with the things that I was supposed to be doing. Yeah. In essence, like, okay, I'm supposed to be going out and talking to as many girls as I can talk to and getting as many numbers as, all those very silly things that don't mean anything at all. But I thought that it was gratifying, or it should be at least. And I just kept hitting a wall after wall after wall. And then if you really focus on the most important aspects of life, which are relationships, our family, our legacy, those types of things, then how do you get there? And it was the gap that I needed to be filled was with God, was with Christ, and understanding that his word gives you hope. I thought it was always restrictive. I was like, man, this is going to be a set of guidelines or rules that's going to restrict me from having fun. And I didn't want to be a part of that, right? But in essence, it's freeing when you live with these boundaries, because it allows you to have the most fulfilling life. And that's the beauty of it all, is when you really buy in, you recognize that these quote unquote guidelines or rules are a structure for how you can live the best life, the best version of your life, and leave the strongest legacy that you can leave. If I die tomorrow, if I get hit by a truck on the way back to the office in Caldwell, my hope is that I leave some kind of impression on this earth that is lasting. And doing what I was doing before wouldn't have got me far at all. It'd be a stretch in my obituary to say that I was doing something positive. But I feel now that I'm trying to do the right things. I'm learning each day, and by no means am I perfect, but I'm looking at it from a different lens, and it's giving me hope that I can not only live that way for myself, but for my boys and my wife.
And I gotta say, like when you mentioned how Matt came and you guys are shooting hoops or whatever, because I remember when I first met you, and I'm probably not near who Matt is, but I remember just seeing a light right about you, and I'm pretty sure Matt saw the same thing, right? And that welcome, that love, that light that you just so freely give. And probably back then you didn't even know that you were giving it off, but I know, like I'm feeling it right now. It's just like the light and love that you share, and like that legacy that you talk about that you want to build. I remember you, again, I think it's probably been 5 or 6 years since we've met, and you've been talking about that since we first met, right? Like, I want to do something. I want to leave an impact. I want to do something good, and I think it's just so honorable and just so cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Kyle, so much, and I am grateful, and I think really what happens is, man, you start following God and doing those things, but these are blessings that I didn't earn, and certainly didn't warrant through my behaviors, and I'm just grateful that, again, God opened the doors for those things to happen, these relationships that have been built, and following through with them for me was very, is life-changing, transformative for my life. If I didn't meet Matt at that time in my life and understand what was going on with his life and recognize those things, I don't know where I would be. I was in a very dark place, and I've got tattoos on my arms and things like that, and I remember wanting to do more of that, and I think back on it now, and I'm like, man, that was probably a way for me to cope at some level with some of the pain that I was going through, and some of the things that I was experiencing. And my brother also has tattoos. In fact, he has one on his head. He went really deep into that, and all over his legs and his back and everything else. And he and I have even talked about it since or more recently. And he even said, man, I tell you, it's one of those things where you keep going back to the pain of that, and it's a way for you to just deal with it. And it's one thing, again, it's a cultural thing, but more than that, it's a deeper phenomenon, which has I think a direct link to some of the things that you've experienced.
Yeah. But I want to go back to the one thing you just said about, talking about grace, right? You didn't think, that you could have all these blessings, but it doesn't matter where you were, right? It matters where you're going. And I think that's I think that's a key lesson out of that little story right there, that, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter where you were. If you're willing to jump in and again, and even go back a little further in the conversation, I love you thought you're going to get restricted, right? We talk about that with our youth all the time, right? Everyone thinks, the 10 Commandments and, word of wisdom and all these things, right? That we all kind of rally behind, and all their friends are telling them, oh, why would you do that? They're just trying to restrict you and tell you what you can and can't do. And we're on the other side, like you're saying, no, we're trying to, because when you go down that path, that's when you get restricted, right? That's when you're trapped. The other direction is how you really open and are able to move.
Yep.
And I love the topic of light too. So, we talk about Steven having light in his eyes, man. It just, your aura is just light. I firmly believe every one of us was created from light. Every one of us has light in us. Like, it is there. That doesn't mean that it's not real that we feel darkness, right? And so as we feel more darkness, and as we're maybe hanging around with the wrong group, I believe the light does this and the light does this. And it's up to us to choose to exercise that light. And so what I'm hearing you say is like, man, you had some tough times when this light was like suppressed, but there was a moment where you're like, look, it's time for me to be called up. Like, and I'm wondering what that was, because inside for me, it was this feeling that I knew in my heart, like God was saying, there's something more for you. And I would sit there and I would keep saying this. And my mom used to always say, I'd sit on her lap, she'd give me a kiss and say, hey, someday, Jared, you're going to change the world. And Kyle and I talk about this. And I'm like, whatever, mom. Whatever, mom. And then she just kept saying it. And she just kept saying it. And pretty soon I'm like, one day I'm going to change the world. But it requires us to let this light grow. And as the light grows, there's discomfort. So as you start letting your light grow, because where you're at now, man, that's years of growth. Was it comfortable? Was it always comfortable for you? Or how did you get to this aura?
It was not comfortable. Any transition in life is tough. It really is. But I think it's a stepping stone, right? It's one of those things where, gosh, had I not gone to Oral Roberts, I remember going to Oral Roberts, by the way, early on in my freshman year, and I was emotional about it because I was by myself in Tulsa, Oklahoma, didn't know a soul, and it was scary for me. But had I not done that, I wouldn't have been able to get to Missouri State and take that next leap to the next situation that again God had for me. And from Missouri State I came to Idaho, and I'll tell you what, I wouldn't have done any of that had I not done the first big move and the big transition, right? That open door, that opportunity, that situation. So I think, yeah, anything that God's going to use moments in your life to stretch you and to grow you, and they're often uncomfortable. In fact, they're not. If I were to pray, I'm not going to say, God, you know what? I would like to have an eviction so I can grow and get stronger and just feel more connected to you. That would be really nice, if I could have that. But in reality, we don't want any of those things. We want a life of comfort, right? That's what we aspire to have. And I certainly wanted that. And even from Missouri State, I remember saying, gosh, when I transition from here, I'm going to go to Dallas or Atlanta or somewhere else because I like sports, and I'm going to go to NFL games and concerts or whatever the case is. And God was like, nope, you're going to go to Idaho and you're going to hang out and you're going to grow, and it's going to be the best thing for you, right? I had an internship at Walmart from Missouri State. And a lot of students from Missouri, because Springfield is Southwest Missouri, and it's closer to Arkansas. So a lot of kids will go to either Walmart or Tyson Foods or one of these big corporations in Northwest Arkansas, or even some areas of Missouri. Bass Pro Shops is in Missouri, O'Reilly, they're all headquartered there. So there's some big corporate groups that are based there. So I was like, I'm going corporate. Got an internship. My wife flew out, at the time it was my girlfriend Chelsea, but now she's my wife. And we were driving. My car broke down on the freeway, and the guy that picked us up had, I want to say like 3 teeth, maybe. And it just wasn't a good impression for her. Yeah. So we drove down to Arkansas where he took us to get a new rental car because our car had broken down. And it was just like each thing that was happening was just not a good impression, right? And that led me to Chelsea, my wife, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, was like, no, we're not moving to Arkansas. This is not working out.
This ain't happening.
This is not happening. So that forced me to come this way. Obviously, at the time, I fought it tooth and nail. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. But, man, I'll tell you, since day one, I will say, just open doors and opportunities have happened. And now I'm in a position where if I were to look back and unravel everything that I've been through, there's no way I could have predicted where I'd be. I wouldn't be sitting here with you guys right now, as much as I love this, right? If my plans had been fulfilled, it wouldn't have been happening. And I couldn't be more grateful that my plans didn't work out.
Isn't it so cool how we can look back and connect the dots? But when you're going through it, sometimes you're like, where are you, God?
Yeah.
Like, can you show up? Like, there's a quote that I once heard that says, at the end of every feeling is an emotion, or at the end of every emotion is a feeling. At the end of every principle is a promise. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to kind of what you're talking about. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in the feeling or the emotion, right? And it's real. It's very real. And when we root ourselves in that emotion and feelings, I think our life can feel out of control at times. But what I'm hearing you say is you were all about emotion for a while. I mean, your period of life was like moving 8 times, changing basketball teams, trying to figure this out, failure here, overcome there. But at some point you said, hey, I'm going to root my life in principle. Mm-hmm. And when that restrictive, quote unquote, restrictive principle is engaged, like there's a promise with that. If you make these decisions, if you do this, then there's a promise. And what I'm hearing you say is that promise is like tenfold or 100-fold what you could have ever imagined in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I could tell my younger self something, I would say, hey, enjoy the season that you're in, the moment that you're in, as opposed to chasing your dreams and looking beyond that situation. I remember working, I worked at a number of different places. I talked about Missouri State. I worked at State Farm. I worked at a grocery store. I worked at a clothing store called Route 21 at the time. I don't even know if they're still around or not, but I did a lot of those things, and I've taken elements of each experience and built that into what I've done today. But what I've chased in life is really my passion for things, and that's led me to the profession that I have today in economic development with the city of Caldwell. I love it. I wake up every day and I'm like, man, it's a new adventure, new opportunity, and new relationship that can be built. And I love this transformative effect that takes place when you can have a fingerprint on a process and just try to help move things forward. And you see it's a very daunting process in terms of the development process. It's never straightforward, and Kyle could tell you this better than me, but it's really one of those things where there's curveballs all throughout the process, right? There's something that's uncovered in the land, or there's a permitting issue, or whatever the case is. But as you work through that and you see the final product, it's just amazing, right? And you're like, oh, I'm gonna do this again because it made such a great impact on the community and whatnot. But it's one of those where, again, you just follow your passions, and that helps fulfill your purpose. But having that opportunity just to learn and grow from each experience that you go through, and don't take it for granted. I mean, that's huge. Yeah. That's what I tell my kids, like, man, you're in this season right now, enjoy it. Do not look at the next, my son, my eldest son, he's talking about growing up and being an adult, and I can't wait for this and that. I'm like, no. Enjoy this moment, this opportunity that you have and this season that you're in, because I guarantee you it's going to be a season of life that you're probably going to look back and say, man, I wish I was back in that. Just took it for granted. So
when you talk about, let's fast forward now, because you're at the college level. You got to take this internship, or the internship in teaching and stuff. And there's a word that keeps coming to my mind. I'm just going to throw it out there. I want to get your take on it, what you think about it, and then maybe some advice that you could give listeners to. But the word that keeps coming to my mind that I want to share is surrender. Mm-hmm. And in that moment when you're like, look, man, you don't understand me. My life is supposed to be like this. I'm a star. I'm an NBA star. This is how it's supposed to go for me. And in this moment, you're like, okay, hang on. I'm going to surrender to something higher. What does that word mean to you? And how can you help others see these moments in their life and times where they may be able to surrender?
Mm-hmm. Some of us, like myself, are more hard-headed than others. And it takes a few conks to the head in one form or another to really learn and understand what that looks like. And in my life, I can tell you that you have these pivotal moments that take place that force you to react or to respond in a different way than what you had been doing. So in my life, I know that it was an eviction, of course. That was a big moment for me to, at the time, get me out of Georgia and do different things. I had kind of grounded myself there and wanted to stay there. I rooted myself in an area because I had all these juxtapositions. I was moving, transitioning, all these things, and I didn't want this itinerant life that was imposed on me. So I felt like I needed to take control of that, and it took that eviction to get me out of that place. And then for teaching, of course, I didn't want to do that. I resisted that pretty thoroughly. But in the end, it was the best thing for me. And I think as you do that incrementally in life, you put a little trust in God. You say, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit. I'm not going to give you everything, but I'm going to give you a little bit. And you see how he responds to that. And then you build more trust, and you're able to take bigger leaps from that point forward. So now in my life, I'm still a little more cautious than most, I would say. I'm not the kind of guy that's just jumping headfirst into a situation. But I can tell you this, I think because those promises, those biblical promises that have been fulfilled in my life have shown themselves to be true, it's given me more faith for what the future holds. And it's allowed me to step into the situations, the opportunities that God has for me in a manner that I probably would not have done early on in the process, just because it's been built over time.
Yeah, I love that. Built over time, right? I think so often, because we do live in a world of like instant, right? God, show yourself to me. Well, if you don't show yourself to me right now, then you're not there. That's not how it works, right? We don't have instant. We can't have instant gratification, right? Gratification, you know? And so I think that's an amazing point. Like, just incrementally it's built, and it's still built, and we're still building every day.
Yeah. And you said you gave God just a little bit. It's so crazy because I'm like, well, how could I give him a little bit? Yeah. And then you give him a little bit, and then what he gives you is a lot. It's not like this proportional thing. Like I give God a little bit, God gives me a little bit, and we keep working towards some middle. It's like, man, whenever I've turned myself to God and I just give him a piece of me, he takes that piece and man, he molds that and he does something magnificent with it. And it's like, my hard head is like, if I would just get out of my own way, put more trust and faith in God, I wonder whom I could become. And so who are you supposed to become, Steven?
I'm supposed to become really the thing that I'm led to do now is to make that impact in each and every relationship that I have, each situation I have, and build a strong foundation for my boys. That I have 4 boys, by the way. They're aged 11, 10, 5, and 1. So it is a wild household, no doubt. But at the end of the day, I need to provide a strong foundation for them and their futures, and leaving that imprint that I hope to leave on this earth when I'm gone one day. And it's an ongoing pursuit in my life. I wish it was instantaneous, where you remember the cup of noodles, you just heat those up, 5 minutes, boom, you're good to go.
Burn your mouth really bad.
Exactly. But you're not going to get there. We have such a microwave mentality. Development's taught me a lot with patience, I would say, being in this role that I have now for almost 6 years. I like to see things happen overnight. I want to see a building go up and a restaurant go in there, or a clothing store or a manufacturer, and that provides jobs and opportunities. I want to see that happen overnight, but it never does. I'm working with a grocery store right now, and they're about to announce their arrival to Caldwell here, or their plans to build in Caldwell in the next, let's say early May. So we're almost in May here, but early May, and it's taken me 3 years to get there. And it's one of those things you're like, oh my gosh, did I know it was gonna take 3 years? No, but I maintain that excitement throughout that process. But it's not instantaneous. It's one of those things. It's an ongoing chipping away at my character, my levels of integrity, those types of things that I want to continue to build on. So I don't know what the future has for me, but I can tell you that piece by piece, I'm going to try to fulfill what God has for me in terms of his plans and not my own.
I love it. I love your faith. Steven, thank you so much for joining us today. Man, I just want to tell you, I want to call you Matt, actually, because like you're the Matt in people's lives, I can tell. And when you connect with people, your imprint is everywhere. You're the Matt for somebody else many, many times. And I'm grateful for your example. I hope everybody here today felt your light and felt your mentorship and felt your wisdom and wants to become more like you, become more like Matt, like he did in your life. And I know your legacy, your boys are lucky to have you as a dad, as a father, as a role model. And like always, guys, we are so grateful that you're here joining us on this Hold On podcast. And for those stretches of your life, just like Steven had, that are hard, that are dark, man, find the light here. Choose to hold on. And if you like this podcast, we encourage you and invite you to share it, to like it, to subscribe, ask your friends to join, jump on. Who knows, you may just one day be Steven sitting here behind the microphone. Thanks for joining us.